Welcome back to Bot's View, where we explore the most significant political shifts and moments. In today's video, we're taking a closer look at Joe Biden's presidency and why so many voters felt disenfranchised during his term in office. As Biden prepares to hand over the presidency to Donald Trump in January 2025, we're reflecting on the weaknesses and mishaps of his administration that led to a growing sense of frustration and disillusionment among the American public. From rising inflation to failed foreign policy, Biden's presidency has been marred by a number of controversies and challenges. Let's break it down. One of the biggest criticisms of Joe Biden's presidency was his handling of the economy. While he inherited an economy in the midst of recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, many voters expected more decisive action. Instead, Biden's policies, particularly his spending programs and stimulus packages, contributed to the highest inflation seen in decades. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the annual inflation rate reached a staggering 9.1% in June 2022, the highest since 1981. This led to soaring prices on everyday goods, including food, gas, and housing. A Pew Research survey found that 77% of Americans listed inflation as their top concern during Biden's presidency, with voters across the political spectrum blaming the administration for rising costs. For many working-class and middle-income Americans, Biden's economic policies seemed disconnected from their daily struggles. Despite Biden's efforts to push through the American Rescue Plan and other initiatives, the inflation crisis only worsened, leading many to question the effectiveness of his economic strategies. The discontent was especially noticeable in swing states, where voters felt the impact of higher costs most acutely. Another area where Biden's presidency fell short was foreign policy, with his handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal standing as a major failure. In August 2021, the U.S. withdrew its troops from Afghanistan, ending America's longest war. However, the chaotic withdrawal left thousands of Americans and Afghan allies stranded as the Taliban rapidly took over the country. NBC News reported that 79% of Americans disapproved of the way Biden handled the withdrawal, with Republicans and Democrats alike expressing frustration over the lack of preparation and the hasty exit. The images of Afghans clinging to planes and the massive evacuation crisis became defining images of Biden's presidency. In addition to the Afghanistan debacle, Biden's foreign policy faced criticism for its handling of tensions with China, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the global supply chain disruptions. The lack of a coherent, strong response to international crises led many voters to lose confidence in his ability to manage the nation's foreign relations. Immigration policy also became a flashpoint during Biden's presidency. Despite campaign promises to create a more humane immigration system, Biden's administration struggled to control the southern border and address the migrant crisis. Border Patrol reported record encounters with migrants in 2021 and 2022, with the total number of migrant encounters surpassing 2 million in 2022 alone. This caused a strain on border facilities and raised concerns about border security and public safety. A Washington Post poll found that 64% of Americans disapproved of Biden's handling of immigration, with many voters feeling that the border was out of control under his watch. The administration's failure to provide clear policies or effective action on this issue led to frustration from both moderates and conservatives, who believed the Democratic Party was too lenient on illegal immigration and not focused enough on securing the country's borders. One of the major points of dissatisfaction with Joe Biden's presidency was his handling of crime and public safety. Crime rates in the U.S. saw notable increases during his term, and many voters voiced frustration over the Democratic Party's approach to law enforcement and criminal justice reform. According to FBI crime data released in 2023, violent crime increased by 20% across major U.S. cities since Biden took office in 2021, with particular surges in aggravated assaults, robberies, and homicides. Murder rates in big cities spiked by 30% during Biden's first 2 years in office. This rise in violent crime led to significant pushback from citizens, especially in Democratic-run cities where crime rates were highest. A Gallup poll in late 2024 showed that 60% of Americans listed crime and public safety as their top concerns during Biden's presidency, with many feeling that the administration's policies were not doing enough to address the root causes of crime. Biden's support for progressive criminal justice reforms, including policies around police funding, defunding initiatives, and calls for leniency in sentencing drew significant criticism from voters who were struggling with the rise in crime in their neighborhoods. Critics argued that the emphasis on social justice and reform efforts was perceived as a shift away from ensuring public safety, and many voters, especially in battleground states, felt their concerns were not being prioritized. A Reuters poll in 2024 found that 53% of Americans felt that Biden's policies were too lenient and had contributed to public safety concerns. Additionally, 64% of suburban voters said they were unhappy with the rise in crime during Biden's presidency, which had a significant impact on his approval ratings in suburban districts across states like Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. This dissatisfaction with Biden's handling of crime, coupled with concerns about the defund the police movement and a perceived lack of decisive action on violent crime, led to a growing divide within the Democratic Party itself, as many moderates and independents began questioning Biden's priorities. The frustration with Biden was not just about his policies, it was also about disenchantment with the Democratic Party as a whole. During Biden's presidency, we saw a growing divide within the party, with progressive factions pushing for more radical change and moderate Democrats feeling increasingly alienated. A Pew Research Center poll found that 52% of Democratic voters were dissatisfied with the party's direction, with many expressing that the party was too focused on progressive social issues and not enough on economic stability or public safety. This sense of division within the party led to calls for a new direction. With Biden's approval rating consistently hovering in the low 40s, many voters felt that the party was no longer a viable choice for the future of America. As the 2024 election concluded, the stage is now set for Donald Trump's second term. Despite the challenges faced by his first term, Trump's victory in 2024 is largely seen as a rejection of Biden's leadership and the Democratic establishment. With Trump's return to the White House, there are high expectations among his supporters for a stronger economy, tougher immigration policies, and a clear stance on law and order. Many Americans, particularly those who felt left behind by Biden's policies, are looking for a reset in leadership, and Trump's second term offers that promise. Biden's presidency was marred by significant mishaps, both in domestic and foreign policy. Whether it was the economic struggles, the Afghanistan withdrawal, or the immigration crisis, Biden's time in office has left many Americans disillusioned and yearning for change. Kamala Harris, as vice president, was closely tied to the administration's failures, which significantly impacted the Democratic Party's performance in the 2024 election. While much of the blame was placed on Biden, Harris's role in key aspects of the administration's policies and her lackluster public presence contributed to the growing discontent among voters. As the vice president was largely absent from the decision-making process, her silence during the aftermath of the chaos further eroded trust in her ability to step into the top role if needed. Additionally, Harris's own approval ratings, which consistently remained among the lowest of any vice president in recent history, reflected the public's lack of confidence in her leadership. She failed to separate herself from the Biden administration's flaws, making it difficult for her to carve out an identity that was distinct from the very policies that many voters viewed as failures. As Biden's term ends and Trump prepares to take office again in 2025, the question remains, what will the future of the country look like under a new administration? What do you think about Biden's presidency and the direction the country is heading? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more political analysis.